Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Somalis in Wisconsin panel discussion. My name is Julie Merck, and I'm a member of the Planning Committee for the Tosa's All City Read, an initiative in the of the Wauwatosa Neighborhood Association Council. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to thank Masterpiece sponsor Beth Jaworski of Shore West Realtors and bestseller sponsor North Shore Bank for making this event possible. I'd also like to tell you a little bit about our format. This is a Zoom webinar, which is a little different than a regular Zoom meeting that you might have joined. You can see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. If you have any questions during the presentation, click Q&A near the bottom of your window and type in your question. I'll pose audience questions as time permits at the end of the presentation. If you have any technical difficulties at any point during the presentation, leave the presentation, exit Zoom, and then reopen this webinar with the same login link that you received by email or in Facebook. So you can just click on the link and you'll get right back in. Finally, this presentation will be recorded so you can rewatch it if you missed anything or if you want to share it with others. A link to the recording will be available on our Facebook page. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Sumaya Abdi and Abdi Nasir Hassan Barud. Welcome, Sumaya and Nasir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
So before we kind of jump into the questions, if you guys want to just give us a brief introduction to yourselves, so just a brief little bit about your background. Sumaya, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Sumaya Abdi. I am a 20-year-old student at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I'm currently studying nursing. I was born in Minnesota, but I moved to Milwaukee about 10-ish years ago, and I've been here since.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Nasir Barud, and I'm way older than Sumaya, almost like 2 times the age of her. I was born back in Somalia in 1981, just 9 years before the government of Somalia collapsed, and we moved to Ethiopia right after the government collapsed, and I moved to the United States in 2006.
Excellent. Well, welcome both. I don't know if I mentioned or not, but you both live in Milwaukee now. So welcome to Milwaukee. And we'll get started with the questions that we have prepared here. I'd like to begin with Nasir, who was born in Somalia and arrived in the United States in 2006. Nasir, can you share a little bit of your story, how and why you first came to the United States, a little bit about that journey and how you decided to come here?
Sure. Thanks, Jolie. And as I say, I was born in Somalia, and when I was at 9 years of age, the government collapsed, and I was lucky because I was not born in, I guess, like in a big city. I was born in the countryside, so we were not living in a city. We were living in the bush. So when the government collapsed, we moved. We were between Ethiopia, I guess, like very close to the border of Ethiopia and Somalia, and we just moved to the side of Ethiopia because my family were nomadic, so they used to move between Ethiopia and Somalia. So we moved to the side of Ethiopia, and a few years later we moved to a big city in Ethiopia. And I never actually lived in a refugee camp, but luckily my family moved to the second largest city of Ethiopia, Dirwa, where I used to live with my family. And in 1998, our uncle sponsored and myself and few of my uncles. And in 2006, and we were lucky to be admitted as refugees to the United States, and we moved to the United States in 2006. And my first 6 months, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. Then I moved to Chicago, where I used to live for 6 years, where I went half of my school. Then I moved to North Dakota, where I went to petroleum engineering, and I used to work in the oil field for a few years. And 2007, I moved to Milwaukee here in Wisconsin. So I live here in Milwaukee with my family, my wife and 3 kids, and we're expecting another one, the 4th one coming on the way.
Congratulations.
I work for We Energy, so I'm probably in charge of Tosa and all Milwaukee area gas. And so if you have a gas problem, probably, or building a new house, I will probably at some point see a design of your gas meter or something like that. So I'm a member of Somali community here in Milwaukee, and I work for We Energies. I'm a senior engineer at We Energies, and And I also own a little business that I do on the side here near the south side of Milwaukee. So that is my little quick and background of myself.
Wow, amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. Before you arrived, this, I guess, is still kind of for Nasir. Before you arrived, what was your perception of the United States? Were your initial ideas of living in the U.S. fairly accurate, or was it different? And I think too, did that change between when you lived in Somalia and in Ethiopia? Did you get a different impression of the United States from people in the different countries that you lived in?
Oh, thanks, Julie. Yes, indeed. And so I guess I was not young. I probably look young, but I'm not young. I'm almost 40 years old. So when I came to the United States, I was 26 years old, 25 years old. Pretty much I came, I think, like, should I say, like maybe 20 days before my 25th birthday here. So I got a lot of families who live at the time here in the United States, in Canada, in Europe. So I have perception of what the Western world looked like, and I guess like living one. So some of my expectations were met. There were some disappointments. I graduated from high school because, like, as I say, I was born in the countryside, so I started my schooling late, and so I graduated from high school when I was almost 20 plus years old, and I attended my first medical school, I guess, like first year of my medical school, and I got my like chance to move to the United States, and at that point I was in medical school, and I say, I'm moving to the United States. That's the richest country in the world. The school that I was going to was free. I was not paying any money. Room and board was free as well. And I say, okay, I'm moving to the United States. Probably there's a better school there, and it shouldn't cost me any money. And when I moved here, I realized I have to pay probably over $100,000 to go to medical school, and also to do a bunch of pre-med stuff like that I already did, and they didn't recognize. So I guess, like, from that perspective, I was disappointed. It's costs so much to go to school here. And I mean, like, the poorest country it was free, but here it costs so much. So that was something that I was not expecting, but I think everything else was, I came here alone. Even though my uncle was here, I stayed with my uncle 6 months, and I moved to Chicago myself. Then I support myself. I was supporting my family from the get-go. I went to school, and I was self-sufficient from, I guess, like 18 days after I came to the United States. It was that quick. So, I mean, like, you can say it's the best country that you can be anything, but it's also it's not easy unless you kind of sacrifice. So I guess, I don't know if I paint the whole picture, but I'm gonna put a one word. When I was in school, in medical school, I was hesitant to move because I love education so much. I was born in the countryside. I didn't get my early, like, education at my early age, and I told my friend, I might stay. So all my friends at school come to me and say, hey, it's better to move to the United States and live and just be a citizen living in the United States, maybe being here in our country as the president of our country. So they have that expectation. Everybody thought, like, the United States was a paradise instead of a country. So we have that perception back in Africa at the time. It's in a way, if you work hard, it became like that, but it's not 100% accurate. Maybe the media puts it that way, or I don't know. In a way, you can bring it to reality, but it's not easy to get there.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. That definitely makes sense. The difference between the perception. Sumaya, I wanna send a question your way. So often the first generation of children born in America have to take on more adult roles if their parents don't speak English well. Other times, first generation is more Americanized and they may not speak their ancestral language well. Were either of these cases a scenario for you? I'm just curious about that.
I would say all of the above. My parents, my parents, they were young when they came to America. They were like 18, 19, so late teenage years. And then they didn't have the opportunities to go to school like everybody else, so they automatically had to jump into the workforce. My mom was a janitor at a hotel. My dad, he became truck driver, hotel person as well. So they were just kind of stuck working, so they didn't have education. So they wanted to live their dreams through us. So, they always emphasize school, go to school, get good grades, become something so you don't have to worry about, the next meal or what we're going to do in the future. So they wanted us to kind of continue that step. But it was kind of hard because they didn't speak English because there's 6 of us and I'm the second oldest. So the older siblings kind of had to take charge of the younger siblings. So we kind of had to experience everything first. So school, FAFSA, all those things like that, we had to kind of go through it. We had to fail, pass with that, and then teach our younger siblings that as well. So we kind of had to take on that initiative. And as far as language, I understand the language very well. I also speak it, but not as well as I wanted to because, I was raised here. I only went back to Africa once. So, I always have relatives who kind of tease us and tell us, oh, like, how do you not know your mother language and things like that? But it's all in jest, yeah.
When you went back to Somalia, how long did you stay and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so there's this thing that Somali people use for kids who are born here, born out of Somalia. They call it dakan elis. So that's kind of like when they want to take you back for culture, like cultural reform, basically, like learn everything that your motherland has to offer. So my dad thought he wanted to take us earlier, but it was a lot of money to cut the ticket for all of us. So he kind of saved up. So when we went, I was about 15 and my younger siblings were all like 10, 12, all those ages or whatever. So I was the oldest that went back and the rest of my siblings, and it wasn't safe for us to go to Mogadishu at the time, the capital, because there's still war and bombings and things like that. So instead of taking us to the south where we were from, my dad took us to the north, Somaliland, in the city called Boroma. And it was the language was obviously different because there's different dialects and everything's kind of different up north when you compare it to the south. And it was a lot different than what I expected to be. Obviously, it's not as modernized as America. So we were little like, city kids, spoiled. We weren't used to all these animals around, and the schooling was way different. We were actually ahead of the other kids in schooling. So we were like top of our class over there. But like growing up in America, you kind of believe the propaganda that, America kind of tells you, like over there they're poor, there's a drought, they're not happy and stuff like that. But when you look at the people over there, they're actually very happy. Like they could be poor and they'll still be smiling. They could be selling milk for like make maybe $5 a day and they're still happy. They don't care. They all just laugh. And I thought that was kind of neat. And my parents always make fun of me when I talk about Africa because there's this one thing that I always remember is that here in America, when you cloud watch, like the clouds go really fast, but over there, the clouds move super slow for some odd reason. So I would just sit outside and just stare and be like, why do the clouds move so slow? But then it kind of like reflects their lifestyle over there. They're carefree and they just take it day by day and they're super happy. So I thought it was a good experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. And how long did you stay when you were there?
I stayed there for about 10 months before I had to come back for school.
Wow, wow. And so when you were in the north, were you with your family? You had family who had migrated north?
No, we don't have family over there. It's just there was a lot of other people that came from different like United States, UK and stuff like that. So we didn't have family. But there's also people that spoke English there. So that was sort of a comfort place for us.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing. Nasir, do you feel that you've been able to find the work and or school opportunities that you envisioned? I know you kind of talked about that. I guess when you think about where you are now, is it where you thought you would be? Do you feel, or is it totally different than where you expected you would be when you left?
I guess like so I didn't get my first choice or the second choice. I think I got my third choice, which is an engineering field. I was planning to be a doctor first, then a pharmacist, and I get the chance to become a pharmacist. I got accepted to a pharmacy school, but I left because it was too much money, and I didn't want to take a loan. And I got into engineering schools. I got accepted to a lot of different engineering schools, and I went to the cheapest one that I could get, and I was lucky to graduate without loan. And so no problem. I guess education-wise, I'm happy where I am. I'm not a PhD holder or anything, but like we make a living out of engineering, so I'm good.
Excellent, excellent. And you, and this is a question for both of you. This kind of comes back to maybe what Sumaya was talking about a little bit. And Sumaya, if you want to take this one first, and then Nasir, I'm going to ask you to answer it second. Do you still have friends and family in Somalia? And if so, have you talked to them about the current political climate and difficulties of day-to-day life? Maybe even, when we think of some of the things today going on, COVID-19 or any other current events. I know there's really, Somalia's been back in the news with a lot going on there. Do you still talk to folks at home?
So I don't really have friends there because I wasn't there that long, but we do have a lot of family members there, and Somali people, communication is key for them. So whether it's on WhatsApp or another Facebook calls or something, they're always in contact with each other. They tell what's happening over there, and we tell what's happening over there. There's always that Trump joke here and there. They make fun of us and Trump and how are we alive and things like that. But usually they try to talk about more. The adults are very interested in politics. Obviously, every other conversation is politics. The men sit at tables and talk about politics for hours and they don't get tired. But for family, we usually just talk about our well-being.
Yeah. And so your parents still have some of those relationships with relatives at home?
Yeah, we say hi here and there, but since we don't really know each other like that, the kids
Right.
just kind of say hi, but the parents usually keep in touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Nasir, do you have context there?
Yes, I do. I guess let me put a broader picture on Somalia. Somalia used to be before 1800s and whatnot. Actually, I should say 1900s, when the colonizers, the European colonizers, come to the Somali or Africa, especially not the United States. It was Britain, France, and Italy. They all colonized Somalia. So there's 5 different Somalis. So there used to be a French Somaliland, and there used to be British Somaliland, there used to be Italian Somaliland. So those are the big 3. Then there's Ethiopian Somalia, and there's a Kenyan Somalia. So they divided the country into 5 different parts, and they kind of like they kind of fought over each other, and they say, okay, let's divide it and take French took one part, Italian took one part, British took one part. They give it one part to Ethiopia and the other part to Kenya. All of, I guess, like the Ethiopian part and Kenyan part, all of those were under the British colony. But when they left, they kind of divided into 5 parts. So the British Somaliland and Italian Somaliland become the Somali Republic that we know. And the French Somaliland become Djibouti. It's an independent country right now called Djibouti.
Yeah.
And we have one Somali region. So Ethiopia is 9 states, and one of the states is Somali region. It's about 8 million people live there. And we also have a Kenyan Somalia. So Kenya is also a different state, and one state is Somali state, and that's almost 2 million Somali people live there. So when the Somalia government collapsed, the Somali people went to Kenya, and they didn't feel like they are immigrants because there were Somali people that have a whole region in there. And we went to Ethiopia. I went to the Ethiopian side, and there's 8 million Somali people who live there, and we didn't feel like we are immigrants. We live with our Somali brothers and sisters. So the 5 Somali regions, or the 5 Somali governments that we have, even though they have might be 4 different passports now, it's almost a one nation. They communicate with each other. So I never go back to the Somalia and that I was originally from. But I go back to Ethiopia every year. In 2008, I went 3 times to Ethiopia.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
In 2019, I went 2 times to Ethiopia. This year, I was not lucky to go back. But I have friends in Somalia. I have a lot of friends in Europe. My kids and my wife are from Sweden. So I used to live partial in Sweden too. So I used to go there, and we have, I guess, like I communicate with a lot of different Somalis in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Djibouti, in Somaliland, they call right now, northern Somalia, Mogadishu area. So yes, I have communication everywhere in Somalia, and I have a lot of friends, even though I don't live with them. We call each other every day, and maybe you can call every Somali person that you meet, or a grown-up Somali. It can be a CNN commentator. They are politicians, all of them, as Sumaya alluded to. I mean, like we are called a poem nation. They used to, I mean, like we don't write stuff. If you give me a book, I will not most likely read it. But if you give me an audio book, I will listen to it or watch it all day. So Somali people used to be oral society. So they used to transfer, they used to communicate and transfer information through poem. So if I want to know something about 1800, I will listen to a poem. There's no writing. There's nothing. I mean, like the Somali language was written in 1972. Before that, there was no Somali language. So there's nothing in Somali that you can find older than 1972. And everything older than 1972 is English or Arabic or Italian or whatever the colonizers left. So yes, I mean, there's news everywhere. I mean, like they all have Facebook lives. They all put the information all everywhere. I mean, like I don't communicate with all of my friends, but I have like over 10,000 friends on Facebook, followers. I mean, like I have 5,000 Facebook lost friends. So and they all over the place. So yeah, I mean, it is what Somalis do mostly. It's, you know, like it's an oral society.
Right. And so is there, I guess has COVID, is there big concerns? Have there been a lot of issues with COVID, or has it been kind of kept under control pretty well?
See, it's an interesting point. And so the Somalian people believe we are Muslims 100%. Or at least we used to be, I don't know now. And they kind of believe the divine, you know, like rule, and everybody has a moment that they will die. So they don't worry about what will happen, or what will you eat tomorrow, or what will happen to you tomorrow. They believe, you know, like God has already prescribed a day that they will die, and they will die. And if they will get sick, you know, like that, you know, like God already prescribed for me to get sick, so I'll get sick. In Somalia, COVID is not an issue. They don't care. And I think I mean, like I went back to Ethiopia before, just, you know, like with COVID started, and they live the same. Even if you go to the Somali part of Ethiopia and Somalia, they live the same. So there's no, I mean, like there's no self-distancing, there's no mask. They don't care if someone dies, you know, they die. So I think even here in the United States, their immunity might be higher, and because maybe the reason is, I don't know if it's what they eat, or they already, you know, like get sick so many times and they have that resistance. I think they already have so many different viruses and stuff that, you know, like our body get used to it. So, you know, like I never get vaccinated.
Strong immune system.
Yeah, I never get vaccinated in my lifetime. I only get a flu shot once, and I get sick the year, and I never get it back again. So, I mean, like even here in Milwaukee, you'll see, you know, like 10 Somali people sitting together, and then nobody has a mask. They don't care. So it's not being an issue. There's a lot of deaths. I know there are people that I know who died for COVID, but, you know, like they are not, if I count them, they will not be tens. So COVID is an issue everywhere in the world, but they're not concerned that much.
Yeah, Sumaya, yeah.
I can add on. I would agree. Yes, Somali people are very socialist. Like they thrive in socialization. They can't be alone for too long. So when COVID happened, I don't think any Somali person actually believed that, like their stubbornness was like, no way, it's gonna get to me. Like that's never gonna happen to me. But when things started getting serious, I know for a lot of people they have terminally ill or chronically ill people in their families. So the stubbornness was there at first, but then after the while, they had to, like I know for my family, we had to be like, oh, you know, it's not safe for us to be together anymore. We know we want to be together, but we can't because I have a grandpa who was a cancer survivor. I have a cousin who was just a new kidney transplant. So it was more a matter of danger. So like every Sunday or Saturday of the weekend, we'd all come together. We'd be like 24 deep in the house, you know, cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles. But when COVID happened, we kind of had to stop that. And I guess it was kind of a weird shift for everybody because they're used to like loud houses and now everyone's kind of like stuck at home by themselves and then they're just praying to God like, oh, please just make COVID go away. And I know for a lot of Muslims, we couldn't go to the masjid either, like the local mosque, and that was kind of troubling for a lot of us because it happened right in the middle of Ramadan, our holy holiday where we fast the whole month, and everyone was just used to every night going to the mosque and suddenly they're like, what are we gonna do, you know? And it's kind of that spirit of togetherness was kind of broken because of COVID, but there was our mosque did come up with other solutions, but it wasn't the same. So we were all just kind of in this state of prayer where we're like, we hope COVID goes away.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting, interesting. That's great. And that kind of leads into the next question I want to ask, which is about the Somali community in Milwaukee. So tell us about the Somali community in Milwaukee, and Sumaya, I'm going to probably have you start on this one. In your experience, how big is the Somali community in Milwaukee? Do you gather with other Somalis for cultural events? And are there any places that you would recommend for non-Somali Americans to go to experience and learn more about the culture?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Minnesota, which is kind of like the biggest, you know, Somali population in America. So I was kind of used to seeing Somali shops, Somali restaurants, Somali mosques, and things like that. But when I came to Milwaukee in 2010, it wasn't like, it was a lot smaller than the parts in Minnesota. So from seeing Somali people everywhere, I went down to seeing like one or two. So there's a stay like, oh my God, there's a Somali person. Oh my God, there's another person. Cause you know, you kind of feel as a Somali person, you feel happy when you see another one. But it is smaller, but I feel like it is growing because we have a lot more people moving in. I know most of my family from Minnesota moved here too. Originally, my parents moved here because of the Islamic school here, Sam school, and they wanted us to kind of go there, graduate, you know, keep our religion. But as far as like actual like groups and organizations, I'm not sure there's much. I'm pretty sure we're kind of leaning towards gaining some more, but I know it's a lot more informal. So like the ladies will come together when there's like a new baby born and bless the baby together, or if there's a wedding, they'll all go together, they'll get their henna done, or I know me and my Somali friends hang out a lot. So that's kind of, it's more informal than formal, if anything.
Thank you for sharing that. And Nasir, is your experience similar or different?
Yeah. I think pretty much Sumaya covered the Somalis in Milwaukee. We have about, I don't know, assuming like about almost, I think, 2,000 Somalis live in Milwaukee area or within Milwaukee community. We have some, I think few of them live in Sheboygan. We have a lot in Green Bay and I don't remember the city name, but there's small city to the north also that we have some Somali communities. And so we don't have a lot of shops here. We have a small restaurant somewhere in downtown area, I think on Bradley Street. And we have a grocery store on Mitchell Street, Mitchell and 10th, and where you can find the Somalis and, you know, like cultural foods and stuff like that. And so, and we don't have a Somali center and that, you know, people come together and whatnot and we do some activities. And so, for example, the Independence Day of Somalia, and I think it's July. We have, you know, like as I say, it's so many different Somalis. So we have 2 days that the northern and the southern come together. So we have that Independence Day. So we have events that day, and we have a lot of Somali communities in Canada, and Somali Independence Day and Canada Independence Day happen to be the same day. So they also celebrate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All of Canada is celebrating for you.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
talked
indeed.
about the different Somalias, and when you're in Eastern Africa, whether you're in Somalia or one of the other different regions, do they feel different? And then when you're in the United States, do you feel like, nope, we're all Somali? Do those differences kind of matter less when you're here?
True. I mean, like, no matter where you are, so back home, I think Somali people are kind of like they have different tribes. So I mean, like they geographically live by tribe. So back home, maybe you'll feel that difference and the regions that you live, or like the tribe that you're not you are in. I mean, like you feel that maybe, and I mean, like people asking you where you're from or whatnot. But here in Milwaukee or in the United States, or I guess like anywhere else outside of Somalia, Somalis are Somalis. It doesn't matter if you come from Kenya, Ethiopia, Djibouti, or in other places, Somalia. I mean, like Somali. If you meet a Somali person, you don't even and you will not care if you know this person before or not. It's just I mean, like, it's insane. You will feel that you know them forever. They will talk to you because like they don't have that secrecy of I don't know this person, so I don't have to talk to them. They don't have that. It's a social, as Sumaya said before, it's a kind of a social people, and they will talk to you that they know you forever. So that's how they are.
What we had the book for the read is Call Me American, and the author is Abdi Nor Ibn. So we had a conversation with Abdi last week, and one of the speakers or somebody sent a question over, and it was a Somali person, and the person who was moderating the call read the name of the person, and Abdi said, "Oh, their name," and so the person reading the question said, "Oh, Abdi, do you know that person?" And he's like, "No, but they're Somali." And just warmth was like, it's another Somali person. Like, I know him because he's my country person,
Yes.
So we could definitely see that warmth in there. So kind of shifting to maybe a kind of a different direction. Since you've been in the United States, we know, the climate, things can kind of go up and down, and we know that, America has work to do in certain areas. Have either of you ever experienced prejudice against you in the United States? Do you, that may be because of Somali culture or Muslim culture? Is there anything that you want to share on that topic?
I can go first. So I haven't experienced like extreme racism or prejudice or things like that. And if it is, it's not because I'm Somali, because I don't think the public's that aware of the Somali community. It's more probably because I'm Muslim or either because I'm Black. But it's not like super in your face racism. It's many microaggressions here or there, like a little comment at the store or someone sitting like two seats away from me instead of one and stuff like that. But I know that when the first Somalis came, there was a lot more tension with Somalis, or because I know my mom has a lot of stories where some people, like there's some kind of tension between the Somalis and the African Americans that live here. I don't really understand where the beef was coming from, since we're all Black at the end of the day, but I guess it was kind of a divide between Africans and African Americans here. So there's a lot of fights and stuff in school going on, stuff like that. There's a lot more direct assaults and things like that. But I feel like as the generations go by in America, the younger generation is way more accepting of whatever you are. It doesn't matter. So if someone sees me in a scarf, they'd be like, "Oh, go Queen," or things like that. Or like, "Oh, you're from Africa. That's so cool. I want to learn more about your country." And things, people are a lot more aware nowadays. So I think it is getting better.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And have you, so fortunately, it sounds like you haven't had any problems with, sometimes I've heard some stories of people with headscarves, and you haven't had any concerns with that. Is your scarf also called a hijab?
Hijab. Yeah.
Hijab, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Is it also called a hijab, or is it a different kind of scarf?
There's different versions. The one I wear is called the hijab. The Somalis, the ones they're known for, the bigger ones that reach up to their knees, is called the jilbab. There's, the burqa and things like that. But I went to an Islamic school, so I was a lot more lucky because there's girls all around me wearing the hijab, so it wasn't really a problem for me. But I'm sure girls in like public school faced some kind of prejudice.
Okay. All right. And Nasir, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I guess the 14 years that I live here in the United States, I never encountered any problems. I have been lucky to work in different places in the United States, especially remote areas where, like in a big city. And I spend most of my time first when I come to the United States in Chicago. And I met with everybody. I could say, I didn't meet everybody, but I guess I met every side of the society, because when I came to the United States, the first 2.5 years I drove a cab in Chicago. So that was my eye opening. That was the best experience I had in the United States. It taught me a lot. That it was a very valuable experience. I met lawyers, doctors, the lowest to the highest, and I met famous people, everybody. In Chicago, it was crazy. And I started that job when I was 6 months.
You said you learned all kinds of lessons. What did you learn?
Yeah, a lot. I was kidnapped while I was driving a cab, so that was experience. And I met, if soccer, the biggest soccer fans, I guess soccer players in Europe came from Europe. And I met, famous singers in the United States. I met, baseball players. I pick up anyone. And I had the experience that we didn't have TV. I didn't have a TV, so I didn't know anybody. So I'll pick up a famous person and, I will ignore them, and he say, "You don't know me?" And I say, "No, I don't know you, who you are." So sometimes I used to make people angry, or they'll say, "Why is he ignoring me?" And one day a guy, he was a baseball player, and he missed his bus, and he said, "Take me to," he was going to the game because there was a game. And he said, "Take me to the game." And there were so many people waiting for him so he can sign autograph for them. And he asked me, "Do you want me to sign something?" I say, "No, I don't want anything." I don't even know who you are. I don't know what you do. So I guess I had that experience first. Then I went to Montana. I work in Montana. I work in North Dakota, Wyoming, South Dakota, Canada. While I was doing, drilling oil. So I was a production engineer for Marathon Oil. If you see Marathon gas stations, we used to produce a lot of oil. So for that, I used to work for that company. I want to places that, a very rural area. We used to live in a farm inside, oil wells. So I guess I never had that experience of someone saying you doing this, or, you're different.
Right.
I guess there were incidents, and if you know how to de-escalate, I guess from my experience from Chicago, I guess what my mom told me when I was young, I used to play. I guess I never challenged anyone. I led their way. Then so I could be safe. I could be. Because I don't want to have any troubles. And I could, I could react to the situation and be in trouble, or I could de-escalate. So I'm kind of when someone tries to take that way, I try to take it the other way, and it will be. Nothing will happen. So there was some scenarios or some, people that I feel, I was different, but I never, I never feel intimidated or, someone is doing bad thing, because I already had a perception, to get ready for those kind of situations in my mind. So when something like that happens, I know how to react and how to move forward. So I never had a problem, but I know there are, I mean, like, and it's not, I cannot only say, you know, like there's a problem here. I know there are problems in Somalia. There are people who are Somalis who speak the same language that we speak, and maybe they are discriminated against because of their backgrounds and what they do and what they, I mean, like, I don't know what happened like 100, maybe 100, a few hundred years ago. And so, I mean, we cannot only blame here. I'm sure there's a system. There are problems, but the problems are not only here; they are everywhere in the world.
Do you feel like, and it sounds like you both were really able to assimilate into American culture, you know, really well, and you know, had a great experience with that. Do you feel like there are misconceptions about Somalis that Americans have? And you know, is there anything that you wish people knew about Somalis or Somalia?
I guess, I mean, so one thing that I know, Somalia survived, and we didn't have a government since 1991. And actually the government, I mean, like for January of 1991. So that's over 30 years. And nothing happened in Somalia. Reason being, Somalis are so generous. So, I mean, like, you might not believe me if I say, like, I send back to Somalia or Ethiopia over 1,500 every single month. Start from when I came. Or maybe at least, you know, like not the day that I came, but like at least when I was here 6 months. So I probably would be rich if I could be saving like those 1,500 every single month. There, I'm sending that money to support someone. So it never stops. So I guess, like, you know, like I don't have, I'm one of 14. My mom had 14 kids, not 14, she had 18 kids, but 14 alive. So we're lucky. And all of them graduated, all of them, you know, have their own lives and whatnot. My mom and my dad, they live in Sweden now. And when I came here, I was supporting all of them. Now all of them kind of have their own lives, and, you know, like none of them needs me, but I'm still sending that money to someone else who needs it. So that's how we are. We support each other. We're so generous.
Do you have siblings who still live in Somalia?
What was that?
Do you have siblings who still live in Somalia?
I have one who lives in Somalia. I have a sister who lives in Kenya. I have 3 who lives in Ethiopia. I have 1 who lives in Somalia. Yes. Yes. So we're all over the place now. Some of my brothers and sisters live in England. Some of them live in Sweden. The rest live in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Yes.
So it sounds like that culture of generosity and supporting and making sure you're taking care of people even after you leave is important.
Yes. Yes. I mean, like, we have some issues, and probably we don't have a government over 30 years, and that is a problem itself that they couldn't figure out for 30 years. But I mean, like, it's not that bad. And Somalia has the longest coast in Africa. It's, I mean, like, the whole country is pretty much, you know, like, it's a 7L shape. It's a 7 shape, and that whole 7 is, it lays on the Indian Ocean. So, and we have 3 big rivers. I mean, like, pretty much maybe 25-35% of the country are farmland. And who knows, and like maybe 30% of it is also coastland. It has ocean. So it's I mean, like, it's a so rich country. We have so much resources like oil, uranium, a lot of stuff. And I mean, like, the people are dying for hunger. So that's kind of like, you could say that's stability. But at the same time, you know, like, they've been so generous that they kind of support each other, and they survived that 30 years.
If I can add on.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like people, again, don't know a lot about Somalia or enough about Somalia, and the little that they do is what the media basically shows them. I work at a group home, and I remember one of the ladies asking me, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, you know, my parents are from Somalia." And she goes, "Oh, aren't there terrorists there?" You know, that's kind of like the first question that's asked. Or there's this thing where if you go on Google and you type the capital city of Somalia, Mogadishu, if you type it the way America spells it, all the images that pop up are bombs or wars or destructive cities and things like that. But if you type it in the way Somalis type it into Google, all you see is like beautiful pictures of the beach and happy people and, you know, people together and the ocean and things like that. So I think it's more of the propaganda that's being shown to the people, you know. At the end of the day, these are just people that, you know, kind of, they just want their country back, you know. If they could bring back peace again, they would love to. They'd go back and be happy again, because the war did do a lot of damage to them. So for people to like just assume things about them, I think that's kind of destructive in a way.
Mhm, mhm. That's really interesting. I didn't realize there were two different spellings either that you could,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like there's two different names. Yes, there's one, I mean, like Mogadishu, and it's the official name of the capital city, but we call it Hammer. So it's if you, I mean, like there's a X, the Somalis spell the X as like ha. So if you type that in Google, you'll see, I mean, like, you know, like fish and coastline and beach and beautiful areas.
So the more, what you see is the more real images of Mogadishu.
Yes, I mean, like if you type Mogadishu, you probably will see the 1991, should I say 1991, the 1993 where the Black Hawk Down film was made. So that's pretty much what you see in Mogadishu. But that's not what it is. I mean, like the Somalis went to everywhere in the world. They pretty much went to, you go to New Zealand, you will see a Somali person. You go to Australia, you will see a Somali person. So they all went back to Somalia right now, and they bring in different ideas, and you'll see, and if you go back to Mogadishu, you will see pretty much every single Western culture or shop or a famous, you know, like store that you know somewhere, you will find in Mogadishu. So I mean, like it's coming back to life, but there are still foreign hands in the ruling of the country. I mean, we feel. I guess the way the politicians are about and the way they treat the country, although the way they run is not the way the Somalis want. And so, you know, like there are foreign countries investing billions and billions of money, and you to be, I mean, like even if you try to be a candidate for a parliament seat, you have to pay, instead of getting from people, you have to pay 100,000 or maybe 30,000 fee first to be a candidate. So all of that money is coming from, not from the country, it's coming from somewhere else. So and whoever becomes president in other countries buying that president, and they own it. So there are some foreign issues, and I guess like external hands in Somali politics. But I mean, the country has a lot of future, and people wants it, I guess, like the country back. But I mean, like we cannot just blame a victim card, I believe, and we can do something, I am sure, if they what Somali wants. But I don't know. I don't know how. I'm sure they someday in the future that will happen.
Hopefully, yeah. One of the questions from the audience is, do you miss Somali food and music and other elements of the culture? And then I guess as kind of a counter to that, what parts of American culture do you most like, if any?
I think for me, my mom was like, you know, obviously my parents are from Somalia, so I have Somali food every day, like so much that I'm sick of it. Like if I want to eat out, I'm not going to go to Blue Star because I have enough of that at home. But I feel like there's some kind of a missed element for Somali American kids that are born here, because they don't get to participate, or they don't get to grow up with, like, you know, the dancing culture or the poetry culture. So and those are some of the things that Somali people value the most, you know, their culture and things like that. So when my mom and dad turn it on the TV and they're like, you know, rocking with the poetry and things like that, we're just sitting here like, you know, kind of confused because we don't really know. And, you know, obviously we really want to learn more about it, but there's still that kind of feeling that a lot of diaspora go through, that they have this kind of identity crisis where they're like, you know, when I go to Africa, you know, I like we stick out like a sore thumb. Like I remember this one time someone asked us, they called us over like, oh, you're from America, right? And we're like, oh, how? Because, you know, we put on the full Somali gear and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I can tell how an American walks is different than how a Somali walks. And we're like, oh, that's weird. How? And he's like, oh, Americans walk a lot faster than Somali people. Somali people take their time and things like that. So I feel like we miss out. We have most of the culture, but at the same time, we're kind of missing out on the culture. And I know for me, I grew up here, so I kind of, I'm American, so I know all about American culture, but my parents always, talk about, what's this obsession with football? I don't understand, or, they don't necessarily like American food and things like that, or they hate the snow, which is such an American thing.
Yeah. And Nasir, are there
Yeah,
cultural components that you miss?
I guess so. When I grew up in Ethiopia, so I'm more of Ethiopian than Somalian. I think that is what I consider myself. And so I did not, I was not there when the Somali culture and Somali poetry and Somali drama used to happen. I mean, like we watch it, and I guess like, but they old now, and we can understand and whatnot. And so, food-wise, as Sumaya said, I mean, we don't eat out. 99% I eat, like on my house, and my wife is a really good cook. I help her sometimes, but I'm not a good cook. So we are, I think we are Somali, Swedish, and Somali American. Because my wife is Swedish, so she makes a lot of Swedish food. So we both eat Somali food and Swedish food, not so much American food. And if we eat American food, we have to go out, and that's, I mean, like it didn't happen last year. But from culture-wise, there's nothing actually that we miss. The only thing that I feel bad about, and I'm sure I will do what Sumaya dad did at some point, is like my kids don't speak Somali, and that is a problem. So my wife's first language is Swedish, and her second language is Somali. My kids' first language is English, and they don't even speak Somali.
Mhm.
So that is the problem, and they cannot talk to my mom and my dad.
Oh,
So that is the problem. If I give it to my daughter the phone and say talk to my mom, she will not know a word to say. So that is the portion that we're missing out, and I'm sure we will go back at some point, and I will exactly do what Sumaya dad did. I will leave them there for a year so they can come back. And my uncle took back his two daughters to Ethiopia, eastern portion of Ethiopia, which is the Somali region. And they start talking to themselves. Then, like he said, when after a week he realized there's no improvement, so he took one to a different city and the other one to a different city.
Put 'em up. Put 'em up.
Yeah, he split them up. So that is the only problem that we have here. I mean, our kids are American, but so they're not Somali American, they are fully American. And I think maybe I guess like have to be blaming ourselves because we let them speak English language at home. If we say, hey, speak this language, they would have learned when they were young, but now it's too late for them. So that's the only portion that I kind of feel like we're missing out, but everything else if we want to get some more Somali stuff, we go to Minneapolis. Everything. Otherwise, we have everything here.
Yeah. Thank you. So one last question. This one's for Sumaya. And I guess it's sort of more of a kind of a American, again, topical question. As a nursing student, have you been recruited in the COVID vaccination effort? Is there a particular nursing specialty that you want to pursue?
So I'm still in pre-nursing. I just applied for the program and I'm waiting for the answer. So if I do get accepted, I'll probably get recruited into the vaccination in the fall. And as far as specialty, I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. I'm just trying to get through nursing school first, but maybe trauma nurse or, labor or anything, basically. I don't really mind. I have to put more thought into it.
Once you get more experience, maybe you'll be drawn to something.
Yeah, I work at a group home with people who have mental illnesses, and I like it so far. So maybe I'll go into something like that.
Thank you for sharing that. Do either of you ever see yourself? So Nasir, you mentioned maybe having your kids spend some time. Do you ever see yourself ever moving back or spending more significant amount of time than just visits? Is that something you would ever consider?
So I went back 2018, as I say, to I was planning to go back to for a month, and it happened to be 3 months almost. And so I guess I went to the Somali region of Ethiopia, and we had a government there, and I kind of got involved with the government because like we have oil there in that region, we have a gas and resource there, and I'm a petroleum engineer. So when I went there, they asked me to set up a Ministry of Petroleum and Mines for the state, and I set up the process, and they asked me to stay and become a minister, but I refused. So I guess like it was so close that I kind of like made the determination, hey, they don't have anyone. I didn't see any petroleum engineering person in that region. And so they asked me to stay at that time. And I was almost to move back at that time. And now I don't see anytime soon going back. I will go back, like for vacation and whatnot. But until maybe 10 years, I have a plan, like within the next 10 years, might be. But now I want to set up here and, like let my kids graduate from college and whatnot, or at least from high school. And when they go to college, then I can maybe move back, but not now.
Yeah.
For me, obviously I'm American, I'm born here. So even going there was kind of a shock to me. I was like, oh my God, there's no hot water coming out of the shower, where's McDonald's or things like that. So I want to go back for more visits to things like that. But I know my parents like eventually want to go and retire there, but there's still that conflict with the government and it's still developing. My grandpa now went back for good. Like he was here since in like his 30s. He finally went back and he's like 70 and he couldn't be more happier. But if it does get better, I'm pretty sure we'd go back.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, Sumaya, you don't even need a hot shower, hot water. It's everything. The water is hot already.
No, I had to boil my own water and I did not like that.
All right, well, I think that gets us pretty close to where we're at for our end here. I just wanted to say thank you again so much for joining and sharing about your experiences with us. I think it just really helps everyone, again, build empathy and communities when we get to meet and really hear about your experiences and get to know you as people. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity. As I had mentioned at the beginning, this session was recorded. So if you missed any of it or wanted to share it with anyone else, the link will be on our Facebook page. And one last note, Maureen, who's also on the committee, had sent this book called The First Winter. If anyone is interested in more, reading some more pieces, and there was actually quite a bit of poetry in here from a group of Somali women in Green Bay. Maureen is going to put a link and some information on this publication. It's a great book of stories and poems from a group of Somali women in Green Bay. So if you're interested in reading more, hearing more stories, check our Facebook page for more information on that. Thanks everyone for joining us. And thank you so much, Sumaya and Nasir. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks, Jolie.
Thank you.
Yep.